It's that day. It's a little bit of a special show. One, we're going to pick on me. We're going to pick on everybody. Everyone's going to get hit. It's the worst picks in each round. A look back at Yahoo's pre-ranks and the players in each group of 12, plus the last group of 16, who did the worst and we should have avoided like the plague. And we did on some, but we didn't on others. I am Dan Vespers. This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Please like, rate, and subscribe as you get settled in for the program, which is just going to be me scrolling through a Word document. Although I think I wanted to do, we go read mode? Yeah, let's go read mode. That looks pretty good. Sexy little read mode. Oh, I forgot to change the words in the middle. What a dopey move by me. All right, let's just pretend that Dan's not a moron for a second. But I am, so you're stuck with me. Here we go. Already mentioned like, rating, and subscribing. I'm Dan Vespers on Twitter, Old Man Squad on Twitter, or on Blue Sky, and Old Man Squad Fantasy on Instagram. Let's begin. You know what? I don't like this view. Let's go read mode again. I should have thought this one through before I started the show, huh? You're thinking, I don't want to watch this guy anymore. And you'd be right. Go ahead and turn it off. I suck. Round one, the absolute worst pick you could have possibly made in round one was unfortunately Joel Embiid, who I'll admit, in GamesCap formats, I did say if he falls into the second round, I would take him. So I ended up with him on one Roto team, and you should not be surprised to find out that Roto team is sort of languishing in like 4th or 5th place, which makes me very upset because the rest of that draft, I absolutely crushed it. But without a first-round pick, it's damn near impossible to win a Roto league. You have to be perfect. I was not all the way perfect. I was pretty close, but not all the way. Second-round pick was James Harden. He's panned out totally fine in every format. He's been durable. He's like a late second rounder per game, but he's a first rounder by totals. And, you know, if I was going to punt turnovers, which I had some intention of doing in this league with Joel Embiid. Actually, Harden was my first and Embiid was my second in this one. If Joel plays and is a positive impact field goal percent guy and brings a ton of counting stats with kind of high turnovers, well, anyway, it's a coulda, woulda, shoulda, you know, oh well. Evan Mobley, Walker Kessler. Who did I get late in this one? Amen Thompson, I got late in that draft. Cam Johnson, I got late in that draft. Dyson Daniels, I got in the last round. Smoked the late rounds in a good way. And smoked the first, second round. Yeah, I mean, that's one where you never should have done it in head-to-head because you knew he was going to sit out at least 20 ball games. And then he sat out 60 or whatever it turned out to be this year. So, oopsies. I'm going to put Trae Young as a first rounder that I really didn't enjoy much. He was number 9 on pre-draft rankings. And I know what you guys are thinking as I say it. Dan, he's a punt guy. Like, you got to treat him like you treat Giannis. I'm comfortable with that for one. Like Giannis, if you punt free throws, he goes from ranked 70th to 5th. With Trae Young, you have to punt 2 to get him into the first round. You punt turnovers, you get him into the second round. If you punt field goal percent, you can get him into the third round from where he is right now, which is 5th. Yeah, number 57 in 9-cat. If you got to double punt a first rounder to get him into the first round, that dude ain't a first rounder. And injury notes here in the first round go to Victor Wembanyama, who is doing great and then got hurt. Luka Doncic, who's been great, but has also been pretty knocked out. And Anthony Davis, who also was very, very good and then missed a bunch of time with injury. Those 3 guys combined, well, not combined. Wemby's at 46 games, AD's at 44, and Luka's at 41. Wemby will probably have the fewest of the 3, or the least, when this is all said and done. Between AD and Luka, it's hard to say who's going to finish with more games played, but they're both trying to get into the 50s, which you could kind of semi-salvage it. You got 2.5 weeks left. I think these teams got about 10, 12, 13 games, something like that. Like, if you get them into the mid to high 50s, you could call that not a complete train wreck, but it's pretty damn hard to win your league if you have any of the 5 guys here that went in the first round. Second rounders, and it was Not great, as per usual. Second round had a lot of messes, but it had more hits this year. You go back and watch that show from Tuesday, you can see the hits from the second round. But the misses were substantial. LaMelo Ball, I want like the Breaking Bad Pinkman. How does he keep getting away with this kind of thing for LaMelo Ball, who luckily I think I only took him in roto leagues this year. I don't think I took him in any head-to-head format, which like he would have killed you in head-to-head. 47 games and sitting out all these ones down the stretch. At least in roto, like if you got him I got him in the third in some spots, and that's not a total disaster. If you took him early in the second, where his last pre-rank was, it was a disaster because he's basically the same player as Trae Young this season. LaMelo, about a rebound and a half higher, and then everything else is almost exactly the same. Trae's got more assists and more points. Ball's turnovers were about one less, so like slightly less of a punt turnover guy, but a slightly bigger punt field goal guy. They should be treated the same way, I believe, going into next year. But at least Trae Young's going to play in games. And this is what I said before the season started, too. Until LaMelo Ball shows he can make it through a damn season, I'm not taking him higher than the third round. I'm just not going to do it. And yes, I got him in the third in a couple of spots. And he's been bad there, but not horrible the way it would be to get him in the second. Scottie Barnes was a player that I largely dodged in the second round. So that's another one that we kind of all dodged together. Mostly because I didn't know if his blocks were going to stick, and they didn't really, but also Jakob Poeltl coming out before the season and basically admitting that the Raptors were going to tank was my way of going, I don't know if I want to go tank team with my second rounder. And Barnes is number 49. So, again, not a total mess, but only 58 games right now, and just simply not living up to it. Jalen Brunson at 18 was another one that I said I didn't believe in him getting back into the 20 range. He is one of the least of the bad options in the second round right now because he played in 61 games before this injury knocked him out for a bit. He's number 37 per game, early fourth round, late third round. And I think I said I thought he would be around number 40, which so pretty close on that one. And then Donovan Mitchell, who is, again, sort of the least of the bad options that we talk about here in the second round. He's number 40 per game, right down there with Jalen Brunson, but he's played in 65 games and he's healthy right now. So, again, hasn't killed your team taking Donovan Mitchell in the second round, but he certainly hasn't helped either. A couple of injury notes on the second rounders. Kyrie Irving and Tyrese Maxey were each on their way to having very, very good seasons that will not pan out. Kyrie, number 12, he'll max out at 50 games. Tyrese Maxey, number 10, he'll probably max out at 52, although I guess there's still some thought he might come back for a game or two, but I'll believe it when I see it. Third round is where we stop and remind you guys to hang with our pals at Bet Online. That's the world's most trusted betting platform, and that's what you want when you're going to do some online betting. You want to trust the place you're doing it. It's also the number one source for betting on March Madness, because even if your bracket went bust, remember they had a $200,000 bracket contest, they got a $50,000 Sweet 16 bracket contest. That's free to enter. They've got live betting on every remaining tournament game. So as you're watching them and screaming and ranting and raving, you can bet on it. They've also got baseball, which is officially back today, college basketball, MLB, as we mentioned, NHL, MMA. It's the number one sports betting source anywhere. So from every Cinderella story to every hat trick to every grand slam and on back again, Bet Online has you covered with odds, stats, and more on every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. Round 3. Round 3 was the ultimate of dumpster fire rounds because one had a couple, two had a couple more than a couple. But even like round 2, some of the ones that I called bad were a little more stretchy. Like Donovan Mitchell was not a good pick in the middle of round 2, but your team could easily survive it because he's been there and he's been performing at, like late third, early fourth most of the year. These guys, much like the first round, a lot of them would break you. Lauri Markkanen in the third round has just been one of the worst picks in all of fantasy basketball. He's number 95 this year per game. And I'll admit, I took him in a roto league because I was like, well, yeah, he's probably going to miss 20, 25 games, but I'll take my, I think he fell to the end of the third round in the draft or early fourth or something. I was like, he's going to give me second round value at least for 55 games. 47 games right now and number 95. That's about as bad as it gets. Alperen Sengun, who was taken at number 29, he has not at all lived up to the billing of what folks wanted him to be. I told you guys, don't touch him unless you're punting free throws, which at least gets him into the, I think, late fourth round if you're punting free throws. Overall, he's number 91, but at least he's played in 69 games, so it's not as bad as Markkanen. 19, 10, and 5, that's all great. Counting stats have been solid. Turnovers high. Did not add the three-pointer. Free throws have been a mess. Again, he's been fine, but if you roll it all together, it's damn hard to win an Alperen Sengun third-round league if you are not punting free throws. If you are, he becomes kind of fine, but not great. Going in the 20s, though. Paul George at number 31, that was one that we dodged, thank goodness. I did call him a buy low at one point during the season, so that part I got wrong, but I didn't draft him anywhere. I have 0 Paul Georges because even when I tried to buy low on him, nobody wanted to take the crap that I was offering. He'll end his season at 41 games and number 65 per game. Wasn't healthy, was the clear third option on that Sixers club. And that's what you worry about when you put 3 big namers together. Who's the third guy? Who's the Chris Bosh? It was Paul George. Well, as long as I'm talking about one that we safely avoided, I might as well talk about one that we didn't, and that's Freddie VanVleet, who's number 61 in 9-cat right now. Did miss some time with injury. That was the one thing we had going for us with him, was he was playing poorly, but at least he was healthy for a while. He's back now, so at least he'll finish out the year with probably another 10 ball games, and he'll get into the 60s. So not a big injury mess, but not ultra healthy. He's not going to help him there. And of course, the problem this year is that he shot 38.5%. We know he's a bad field goal guy, but we were hoping for 41, 42, somewhere in that neck of the woods. His role doesn't change all that much. Assists did come down, and you can put a little bit of that on Sengun being healthy all year. You can put a little bit of on Amen Thompson and his ascendance. But more than anything, we needed 2 or 3 percentage points more in field goal. That would have jumped him up from 60 to probably 40-something, and then he would have been fine, but he didn't, so he isn't. That one hit us. Of all the ones in the third round that went poorly, the good news is that Freddie VanVleet was kind of the only one that I liked going into the draft. So of these 6 names that you guys can see on your board over on the YouTubies, we dodged most of them. Dejounte Murray being the last one that we dodged because I didn't want anything to do with him going to a place where he was going to be competing with 3 other pretty high usage guys. I didn't know that he was going to end up blowing out his body and missing the entire season, basically. But that's what happened, and he'll finish at 31 games and number 63 on a per-game basis. He was actually probably going to trend up a little bit from there, shooting 39%. That was probably going to get into the 40s. I actually think on a per-game basis, he probably would have ended up, if he stayed healthy, kind of close to where he got drafted, maybe in the 40s, but he didn't. So, again. And then a injury note on Chet Holmgren, who started the year looking like a second-rounder, and then now they've been sort of managing him a lot, and he will not get there. He's number 39, and his minutes are at 27. So maybe there will be a little bit of post-hype value on Chet next year. Perhaps we can get him in the 3rd next season, because I'd be all about that if it can be done. I didn't get a lot of Chet Holmgren this year. I thought he was going too high. He was getting drafted in the 2nd round in most leagues that I was in, and that was around earlier than I wanted to take him. So, bullet dodged. You podcast listeners are going to get a commercial here before round 4. I don't know about YouTube. I never know what the hell they're going to do. They just drop them in when they feel like it. And I know I can do it myself, but I don't have time for that crap. Round 4, Paolo Banchero, John Morant. Those are the easiest ones to call on planet Earth. Paolo's number 120. He's a punt free throw guy. He's been almost a punt field goal guy. He's a high turnovers guy. There is just almost no way that a player that is that large of a drain in 3 categories can get into the 4th round. Points leagues, sure. He's great in points leagues. 26 points, 7 boards, 5 assists, a couple of threes, 1.5 defensive stats. Great. He's piling up the counting stats. But the efficiency stuff has been deadly. And he was hurt. I don't even care about the fact that he missed half the season with an injury. The hell with that. He's just like not a 9 category guy. You got to multi-punt to get him to where he's being drafted. And that was an easy one to see. Before the season even started, that was an easy one because look what he was. Guys fix one thing at a time. Brandon Ingram was the rare exception that fixed like 3 categories all at once in one offseason, and then a couple of them got worse again over time. But typically, guys get better in like one thing at a time. And so if you're like, all right, if Paolo can fix field goal percent, which feels kind of like a thing he should be better at because he can bulldoze his way to the rim when he wants to, 45, that's got to get up to 47, 48. It has to. Free throws, I know he's trying to be better. It's up to 72.5%. That's an improvement. But still at 120 because of all of it. And John Morant has a lot of the same issues, although his free throws have gotten better this year. Ja's number 96. The field goal percent is not going to fix itself. He's going to be a great accruing of counting stats guy, but he's going to crush you in turnovers and field goal. And hey, good on John Morant for fixing 1 out of the 3. He did it. But he's been hurt all year. He's played in 43 ball games, and that was another one where with 9 cat, that like this was way too early. Immanuel Quickley was a bummer. I really liked him when he was getting drafted in the 60s. I didn't like him as much when he started going in the 40s because I thought we priced him out. But his season has just been derailed by injury. So I would actually look towards next year. I think Quickley will probably fall in drafts more towards that 60, 70 range that I was hoping to get him at this season. And if the Raptors retool a little bit and actually compete next year and Quickley can get in more than 35 games, I think he's got a pretty good shot to be a top 60, 70 guy. So look for Immanuel to be a post-type guy. He was definitely going too early this year, so I don't have him on any of my teams, but he wasn't one that I necessarily didn't like. I just didn't like him at his price. And then Jaylen Brown was another one that I avoided everywhere. I have none of these guys. All the bad round 4 picks of the traditional sense. Don't worry, we're going to get into the headache and injury guys. I do have those. We panned them preseason because Jaylen Brown was another one where you were like, look, you're drafting him in the 40s. You're hoping that he fixes his free throw stroke or you're punting free throws. And most people I talked to were not planning on punting free throws with Jaylen Brown. And he was bad at free throw shooting again. And his field goal number slipped this year. He fit a lot of builds. I'll give Jaylen that. He's obviously the least worst of these 4. And then we've got some headaches from round 4. Jimmy Butler's been a headache. He was another one you should not have drafted in head-to-head. If you looked at him in a games capped format, this is still a disappointment because he asked out of Miami and he got benched for a while and he was playing with his head so far up his own rear end that he didn't put up any numbers. And Kawhi Leonard is the other one who, I mean, look, right now, Kawhi Leonard is kind of like a league winner in head-to-heads. Not at all what any of us expected, but you knew you were going to miss a bunch of time with him. Like, you didn't draft Kawhi Leonard thinking, oh, I'm going to get 65 games. You drafted Kawhi thinking, I'd love to get half a season from this guy, and I'd love for him to be dominant in the weeks that I'm playing him, which he has been lately. Last 3 weeks, last month, basically, Kawhi's been a first-rounder. He looks like Kawhi, and you're going to get 2.5 more weeks of that. Is it worth spending a 4th-round pick on a guy that you can get first-round value for the last 6 weeks of the season? Absolutely not. It's a loss, but you're now finally seeing why I took a chance on someone like Kawhi. And I got him in a league where I think I got him cheaper in a where did I draft him in that keeper league? I'll go back and figure it out at some point. You guys don't care. I care. But he can be kept going into next year, which at least for right now, he's healthy at the moment. Where did I get Kawhi? 5th round? I can keep him at a 3rd-round value next year. I think I might do that. Round 5. Lots of totally fine picks this year in round 5. There were a couple of winners. Vooch, Jared Allen, those guys were the nice wins in round 5. But then a lot of guys in between that were just sort of like kind of fine, you know, not earth-shattering losses or wins. Jalen Duren started poorly, finished strong. He ends up fine. Tobias Harris started poorly, finished strong. Mikal Bridges hasn't been great, but he's been durable. Miles Bridges has been decent. Zach LaVine's been decent. The only big losers in this one of them was so easy to see coming, and that was Zion. Like, again, you knew what you were getting into. This guy that never makes it through a year healthy. He just doesn't. Is a is a true punt free throw guy. Now, by the way, if you're punting free throws, Zion hits this mark. So maybe I should treat him like Giannis in that respect. Like, if you're punting free throws, Zion's a second rounder. 24.5 points, 7 boards, 5 assists, 2.1 defensive stats, and a high volume, 57% from the field. Number 19, punt free throw. That's great. But he played in 30 games again. Even though he got the per game that you wanted in a punt free throw build, he's not playing. I get it. He's the guy that you want for your punt free throw team, but he's got to survive a year. And then Deandre Ayton was an interesting one. If you remember back to draft season, I don't know how many of you guys watched my shows during draft season. Ayton was going like near 100 on the first boards that came out for Yahoo. That was early August. And he just kept climbing. I was like, well, this is ruining everything. At 90, I thought, yeah, why not? He's going to miss a bunch of games this year. I don't know how many he's going to miss, but it's going to be a bunch. By the way, it ends up being about half the year. But surely he'll beat number 90 per game. Interesting footnote, barely beat 90, number 86 per game at this point. So he ends up being a loss regardless. But I feel fortunate that he started going at 60 because I wanted nothing to do with him at 60. And we talked about that near the end of draft season. I was like, look, you can't draft a guy who you expect to play 2/3 of a year at 60 if he's not going to be like second rounder per game. It's why I'm willing to take shots on Kawhi Leonard, because you get him at 50 something, and when he plays, he's a first rounder. You just know he's going to miss a bunch of time. DeAndre Ayton's the same thing. You're just like, okay, in a good scenario, he's a 40 something per game guy. There's got to be a bigger window between where he's getting drafted and where you want him to end up. Round 6 had some stinkers, and I had a couple of these guys. Julius Randle, I did not have. I wanted nothing to do with him in Minnesota. He went from being the clear number 2 in New York to he'll fit in Minnesota, and he's been banged up a little bit. Bradley Beal at 62. This is another one similar to DeAndre Ayton where we got a little bit lucky. I do have him in a couple of spots because he fell into the 70s in those drafts, and I still feel terrible about it, but he was another one that opened up at like 80, and I was like, oh, cool, yeah, we'd take Beal at 80. You know, he's got top 50 per game potential. He's probably going to miss some time because his body is breaking down, but, you know, whatever. Like, if he beats his ADP by 30, well, then they bumped him up. Yahoo, you jerks. So I would have had more, I think, Bradley Beals. I think I ended up with 2 of them across my leagues, which has still been extremely frustrating because of how many missed games he's had. From a per game standpoint, he missed this mark by like a round and a half. He ended up near 80, I think. But by totals, it's been super annoying. Cam Thomas was another guy that ended up going way too early. He was another one that came out like in the 90 to 100 range, and I thought that's an interesting shot to take. And then he moved up to 70. I thought, well, that's the best case scenario for him unless you're in a double punt. I'm not. So we passed on him, and then he got hurt too. And this is the one that I straight up got wrong. I thought D'Angelo Russell was going to have a pretty good year. JJ Redick talked him up a bunch during the preseason about how he needed D'Lo to be super D'Lo. He wanted him to like be free, and then it didn't happen. And then he got traded, and it looked like it was going to save our D'Lo season. And then the Nets were like, no, you can't play 30 minutes. We're going to accidentally win a bunch of ball games. So they've been playing him, 23, 24. And he's just like, yeah, I'm not going to hurt myself for this. So he had like 4 weeks in the middle of the season where it looked like things were good. And then he had like 20 where they didn't go so well. So that one was a bad one. Oopsies, can't win them all. And then Brandon Miller gets an injury footnote here. He was right around his ADP, number 76. I don't know exactly where he was going to end up. I was not a big fan of taking Brandon Miller. He was going like, he meant in the 40s in some drafts midway through draft season. Yahoo wisely dropped him down towards the end where I thought this looks like a safer spot. And then it turned out to be pretty safe until he got hurt. Round 7. No injury things to note on this one. Just 4 guys that sucked. Jrue Holiday at 77. Didn't come close. I don't think he's been healthy this year, though. Just keeps dealing with a shoulder thing. He had a great couple of weeks after he got some time off. Jusuf Nurkic at 78. I'll admit, so before we get to Nurk, on Jrue Holiday, I took him at 85 in one league, I think. And I thought, all right, this is like a 0 upside. He should be okay kind of play. And again, like, you could have sat on him all year. He's number 111. He hasn't been awful. He just hasn't been very good. So that one's kind of like, meh. Nurk's been terrible. He's outside the top 200. And you guys remember I wanted nothing to do with him. Thank goodness for that. Because last year, in my mind, was like a best case scenario for Nurk. He got to play. He was almost unfettered at the center spot. Phoenix had no other options. They brought in options this year, namely Mason Plumlee. And as soon as, well, also the team seemed to hate him, but I didn't personally know that until midway through this year. But I was like, look, if last year was a best case scenario for Nurk, he only beats this ADP if you're punting free throws, which I generally wasn't. He was outside the top 109 cat, and I thought it was going to get worse. And it did. And now he's picking his butt on Charlotte. Colin Sexton at 81 was another case, much like, who the hell did we just have in the last round, of a guy that was going at like 120, and I thought, this is great. This is an easy yes. And by the way, it would have turned out to not be an easy yes. So that would have been a loss also. But once Sexton started going at 80, that was nuts on a tanking team. This was way too early to take Sexton, and we avoided that one. Didn't quite avoid the Bogdan Bogdanovic one. Again, another one where he was going at like 115, and I drafted him in a bunch of spots there, and then he rocketed up the board to 83, and I thought, yeah, I think I still kind of like him there. But what I did not know, and you guys can yell at me all you want about this one, is that he just really wasn't healthy coming into the year. And we've seen a few games as a Clipper, like when Kawhi Leonard was out, where he looked more like his healthy self. And so I'd keep an eye on what happens with him next year. Again, like he might still be whatever, a backup to the backup option in LA. But if let's say he gets moved or whatever, I think he still has time left on his contract, right? Didn't he sign a 4-year deal last year or 2 years ago or something? I'm pretty sure he's got time left on it. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be that easy to move him again. So you'd need the Clippers to probably get someone out of his way. And if they did, I'd look at him. Otherwise, he'll just languish as the 4th or 5th option. And then the extended round 8. Sorry, realize my voice is starting to get a little bit cooked today. Lots of terrible choices in this chunk of 16. Jonathan Kuminga at 88. Thank goodness. Wanted nothing to do with him. That was an easy dodge because his fantasy game doesn't translate to 9-cat. Jabari Smith Jr. at 89. Wanted nothing to do with him because everybody around him on the Rockets was getting better. And he was like right around number 90 last year in what appeared to be sort of like a pretty good scenario. Missed this one. Alex Caruso at 91. I thought for sure he was going to have a decent year in OKC. Yeah, he's been banged up. He's only played in 47 games. The good news is if you're punting points, he actually gets right around this mark with 3 boards, 3 assists, a steal, 1.6 steals, and 0.6 blocks. But obviously, if you drafted him at 91, you wanted more than what he's given. You thought he was going to get, I did too, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, something like that in minutes, and he's at 19 and a half. He's looked pretty good the last week, but the Thunder are just too deep. Casey Wallace has been out. Jalen Williams has been out. He needed a couple of guys to be out, and he needed his own body to respond properly, and so that one just didn't do it. Jonas Valanciunas was a bullet dodged. I wanted all the JVs when he was getting drafted at 130. I didn't want anything to do with him at 93, mostly because you knew he was going to get moved. This was an obvious, I'm going to go to a bad team and rehab my value for a trade deadline shift. But the bad team didn't really let him rehab his value except for like the 3 weeks that Alex Sarr was out. And then he got a couple of weeks in Sacramento when Domantas Sabonis was out. But otherwise, JV's been a turd. And Kyle Kuzma at 98. You guys know I hate his fantasy game. Washington or otherwise, I want nothing to do with Kuz. But the sad little footnotes on round 8 and the last couple of names we're going to talk about on today's show. Jalen Suggs at 95. He was putting together a great year before injuries ruined it, and he couldn't quite come back healthy. His value fell. He finishes at number 94 per game, but 35 games played. He was coasting along in that 40 to 50 range for a while, and the wheels just came off. The field goal percent dropped. The minutes dropped as he was trying to get back from injury, and he just couldn't stay healthy after that. So that one sucks. And Herb Jones was the other one that was sort of like a jury's out kind of call. He was just getting his legs underneath him. He was on a terrific run, especially because you're like, okay, Dan, Herb wasn't very good when the Pelicans were fully healthy. When have the Pels ever been fully healthy? Never. It never happens. But unfortunately, Herb was on the wrong side of this one, and brutal injury knocked him out for the year. He only registers 20 games. Ugh, that one's upsetting because it looked for just a fleeting minute like we were going to get an epic Herb Jones run because Ingram was out until they traded him and Zion never plays. And we had a nice window and then down he goes. Those are your worst picks in the top 100. It's not even worth doing a show that talks about the worst picks outside the top 100 because it has no bearing on your team. You could whiff every pick outside of 100 and still have a perfectly good fantasy team if you get your first 4 picks right. If you get your first 4 picks right, you're going to probably win your league in Roto, and you're probably going to be at the top of your head-to-head league because it's so important. Getting great values late is wonderful. I talked about it earlier in this show. I had a league where I got Dyson Daniels, Cam Johnson, and Amen Thompson late. But because I whiffed on my top pick, my team maxed out basically at number 4. I think I had one other bad one in the 5th round of that. But, man. Well. Hopefully you dodged most of these. We dodged most of them, but not all of them. Looking at you, D'Angelo Russell. Man, I whiffed on that one. I could not have been more wrong on what D'Lo was going to be this year. Just scratching my head. Hit that subscribe button on the way out. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm dropping this show. You've probably noticed. I dropped this one a little bit later. I didn't think there was any point in putting a show out an hour or two before games start because no one's watching that stuff. So Friday, we'll just do a little preview. Friday, we'll have a Thursday recap show. We will have a streaming show for Friday and then through the weekend. And my goal, time permitting, is to get you a weekend show on Saturday that does a little bit more of that kind of weekend review type stuff. But it's just too many things, too many moving pieces right now. But we will try to get you a Saturday morning show. And then Sunday, again, time permitting, we can get you a weekly preview a day in advance like we used to do earlier in the year. I'm Dan for Old Man Squad. Thanks for liking. Thanks for rating. Thanks for subscribing. See you guys soon.